Despite the fact we seem to have lost a few people to coffee at the moment, which I think we're actually embarking on our probably most interesting panel of the day, certainly the one that has triggered the most questions in all the other panels all the way along, I think we should nevertheless start. So the subject of this is societal concerns. So what does the average citizen worry about? What's concerning them? And to moderate this panel, we have the Director of Aviation Safety from the German Ministry of Transport, Raimund KAMP. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the kind introduction. It's a pleasure and honor to moderate the panel number 3 this afternoon. Apparently the snacks and the coffee is too good. People still need a few minutes, but I hope they find the way back in soon. We will talk about an issue which has been mentioned a lot of times as well today and the days before, the societal acceptance. My very own impression is that this suddenly pops up again after the discussions have disappeared during the last 3-4 years, but suddenly it's back on the agenda. And one of my members here in the panel once said that even the societal acceptance might be the biggest challenge for the drone industry to tackle. Interesting. We'll talk about this a lot in the next hour. But first, let me introduce the illustrious and well-informed panel. Piotr SAMSON is the Director General of the Polish Civil Aviation Authority. He is in, yes, please, go ahead. He is in aviation since 25 years, a lot of experience with several operators. He has an engineering and business administration background, and he also has a lot of posts within EASA and Eurocontrol. For example, he is the chairman of the Programming and Resources Advisory Group of EASA. Welcome. Piotr, it's great to have you with us today. And a face familiar to most of you, I guess, LÜCKING, Director of the Strategy and Safety Management Department of EASA. A lot of experience also in the ATM, ATS field. People refer to him as the mastermind of Caesar and also the mastermind of Galileo. So it's a pleasure to have you with us today, Luc. Joachim LÜCKING. He is Director Aviation Safety with the DG MOVE, so the DG for Transportation of the European Commission. And he is responsible for all the policy on aviation, of unmanned aviation, well, aviation safety as well, but in this certain case, unmanned aviation policy within Europe. So it's great to have you with us. Professor MASUTTI teaches air law with a special focus of air insurance law at the University of Bologna, and also is active in a private law firm with a special focus on aviation law. And she's also advisor to several Italian aviation associations, a legal advisor, I should say. Welcome. Dr. Chantal LAVELLÉE. She is a teacher, an assistant professor at the Royal Military College Saint-Jean in Canada. But before, she was actively researching the policy environment for unmanned aviation in the European Union, and she has issued a lot of publications in this field. Welcome to you as well. And to the far right, it's a great pleasure. Please welcome Mr. Jay Merkley. He is the program manager for unmanned aviation and in particular the integration of unmanned aviation with the Federal Aviation Administration of the United States. Outstanding experience in all kind of fields in aviation, and it's a real asset today to have you with us, and you also tomorrow on another panel. So thank you so much for being that active at this European event. So a few introductory words from myself. We've been discussing the societal acceptance several times today, and indeed it is an issue of growing importance. To my very own understanding, I think the challenge is that when we talk about societal acceptance, it's not only about safety. Safety, that's what we, the civil aviation authority community, can handle. That's where our expertise is. We know how to conduct a risk assessment. But societal acceptance, so safety is only one aspect. Other aspects are related to privacy, they are related to security, they are related to environmental and noise aspects. We already talked about it. There might be even some new concerns, societal concerns we have not even yet discovered. Maybe we will discover them this afternoon. And we in Germany, we know a little bit what the problem is, because 2 years ago, when we drafted our very own national regulation on drones, we, for political reasons, decided to take the societal concerns on board of aviation regulation. So we, for example, we introduced restrictions on operations above residential areas, above and close to nature conservation areas, close to infrastructure, close to certain governmental buildings, and so on and so forth. So these were all, let's say, aiming at protecting certain important goods, but not safety. It's not about safety. And now, as we have, as it was greatly explained this morning by several panelists, now we are obliged to apply European legislation, at least by 1st of July 2020. And now it's getting difficult, because when we want to amend this regulation now in Germany, of course we have to consult with the other entities who are in charge of privacy protection, who are in charge of environmental protection. So it's not so easy for us to do the necessary amendments right now. So furthermore, let me give you some figures. I have received recently a survey that was conducted by one of the German unmanned aviation associations. They randomly asked 2,000 people several questions in relation to unmanned aviation. Quite interesting, and to a certain extent it was also touched upon already by the previous panel. The first question was, what do you think of civil drones? That's a very general question. And the answer was that 40% see it critical, they see it negative, they would not like to accept it. And about the same amount of people, 44%, had a positive approach, and the rest was undecided. So as you can see, there is still a major concern among the public regarding the civil use of drones. And this is what we have to talk about. This is a number we have to get down. But by the way, when the question was asked again, asking for civil drone operations in certain domains, the answer was a different one. There were only 3 domains where the approach of the public was negative. That was the use of UAV as a toy, the operation of UAV, I should say UAS, sorry, I always mix it up. UAV is from the old times. The operations of UAS in urban areas to transport parcels and food as well. Regarding all the other operations, agriculture, technical inspections, disaster management, the attitude of the public was much more positive. So as we can see, if we communicate the reason why an operation takes place, it is certainly much more positive, and this is maybe something we should also talk about. So Joachim, no, sorry, Piotr, to start with you. Poland is, as I've learned, quite active to tackle societal concerns, and you have, let's say, issued a couple of interesting brushes and videos as well. What is the Polish approach right now to tackle and to address societal concerns? Open?
Works?
Yes.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Raimund, for this very interesting introduction. If you would ask me the question, what's the single most effective tool to overcome any fears or concerns of the drone, I would say communication. An effective communication and education with the global public about what the drone is, what are the pros and cons, the advantages, disadvantages, what are the risks. So this is the single most effective element to overcome the fears. And to start with, I would like to show you some of the samples of the campaigns we as the Polish CAA are providing to the society in Poland, to the global public about the drones. So I would like to first ask for our short movie. Thank you very much. So this is the movie we have produced together with the Polish ANSP, Warsaw Airport, and the Ministry of Infrastructure in Poland. And this is one of the elements of the campaign in the social media. And can I ask for the presentation now? Okay. So as I said at the very beginning, the best way to overcome a fear of change, because we are talking about the change here, is to communicate, to explain, and to speak in the language of benefits. And it's natural that that some people can be afraid of these new systems, which for many of them looks a bit unsecure. This is another example of some of the materials we are producing, leaflets, like Raimund said, with a kind of the core of conduct. How you should behave to be safe, what potentially are the risks. During the break, I've seen a very interesting video, a movie from EASA, made by EASA. It's a bit different climate, it's in the cartoons, but I think the idea is similar, to put the message across about I would say, the good manners and the core of conduct. And I think it's very important to put this message as widely as possible. So not just to the aviation community, which in fact is aware of these issues, but to the general public. And I think also the important, I would call it a target audience, are the young people. Young people, if you take probably average in Europe, they receive their first mobile phone from their parents, sometime between 7 years old and 10 years old. That would be my guess. And I think we are very close to the situation that potentially they can also receive a toy, and this is a drone toy, but this is a drone. And I think it will be very wisely if we start the whole education, even from the child age, even if the schools, because in 10 years' time, the 7 years old and 10 years old will be teenagers. They will be 16-year-old, 18 years old, and they be capable of operating the big professional drone. In the meantime, the technology will move to the level where the number of drones and the application of drones will be much bigger than today. So I think it's critical to put this education already now as widely as possible. And the examples I've shown here, these are the examples of what I call it an ATL, above the line campaign. So traditional ways, the leaflets, the movies. But I think there is one more technical tool, which would be critical for the right communication. And this is the application on the mobile phones. We all know air maps. We know Altitude Angels, Unifly is this company. In Poland, we have a company called Drone Radar. This is the startup company. But we try to promote this attitude that before you use a drone, first use a drone radar. First use it, your mobile phone, your mobile application as a single point of contact, because from this tool, you can have all kinds of information and you can have the full control of, in fact, the whole drone environment. And I think this is the way we should move. This kind of application, the frontline applications, should work very closely with the ATM companies, also with the CAAs, and it's very important that they all be linked, because it can be the most effective way of pushing the message across. The movies as well, the leaflets as well, but all the young people. I mean, everybody's got a mobile phone. And that will be a window, one point of contact with the whole environment. I can just say that at the moment, in Poland, because of our approach, the drone radar already have 130,000 downloads. So 130,000 people already downloaded this app on their mobile phone, which will mean that 130,000 people is aware of this and is aware of the rules. The basic rule, and I think this is one of the most effective way of the good communication. Of course, the systems will have to be connected with all the back office systems. So the ANSP, USpace, you can use different names, but it should be put in a very simple way that every person, every child, even when buying the toy, first will get the simple app and we'll know the basic rules.
Oh, thank you so much, Piotr. Quite impressive. And what I see is the approach. If you make the information for the operator as easily accessible as possible, then the chance that he will not misbehave, in exclamation marks, is getting bigger, which increases also the public acceptance, which is something which is really logic and certainly a way forward. Thank you for the presentation. Coming back with some questions later. Piotr and myself, we represent member states, and the most important thing right now for member states is, of course, the new European regulations on drones. Joachim LÜCKING, your unit was in charge of these regulations. Could you explain a little bit how you addressed potential societal concerns regarding UAS operations in these regulations?
Thank you and good afternoon. Indeed, the issue of societal concerns was very much at the heart of the development of this regulatory framework that we undertook together with EASA. And in that sense, it's quite special for an aviation safety legislation because it really goes beyond safety, and it deals with, or tries to give answers to all the questions that we have been discussing throughout the day. So how to deal with issues in relation to security, privacy and data protection, but also on noise and emissions. And for us, it was very important to have answers to all these questions in place, because I do share the sentiment expressed by Raimund in the beginning that the success or lack of success of this industry will critically depend on how it is able to answer the legitimate concerns of citizens in these respects. So when I look at the framework, I want to leave aside the safety aspect, which of course is also extremely important, but focus on the other provisions and give you some examples of how we dealt with these issues. So on the issue of privacy, we have introduced a requirement for the emission of a local ID. So the registration number of the pilot will be broadcasted locally, as well as the position of the pilot, in order to allow law enforcement, local law enforcement, to pick up that information and pursue cases of alleged breaches of privacy. That, of course, goes hand in hand with the registration requirements which are contained in the regulation, which were discussed earlier. And to also answer a question that was put in a previous panel, the requirement of having national harmonized system is contained directly in the EASA basic regulation. It is something that the community legislator imposed on us. So if you're not happy with that, you should complain to the national governments and to the local member of European Parliament, but it's not something that the European Commission or EASA invented. Now, moving from privacy to noise, again, I think this will be a very critical issue, and we heard it today. So we made sure that the operations of drone on the one hand are subject to strict operational conditions, and on the other hand, we have introduced noise limits in the regulation for smaller drones, which from our perspective hopefully express the state of art in the market, so making sure that only drones which respect those noise limits fly, and we also see those noise limits decrease over time. And in that respect, it was very heartening to hear from Mr. Höcke this morning that Airbus is pursuing even lower emission targets in this respect. Further, local noise constraints can also be set by the local authorities through the foreseen process of the publication mechanism for the UAS geographical zones. In addition, on the side of emissions, we do have a requirement for certain types of drones to be powered by electricity. That may or may not, as we heard, have an impact on noise, but it certainly has an impact on the sustainability of the operations, and hence also contributes to the Green Deal, which the new European Commission intends to promote as much as possible. And it also has an impact on pollution levels, which again are something which is very much in the focus of the Commission. And finally, we see increasingly the issue of security coming to the forefront. That is addressed in the regulatory frameworks through a number of requirements. So obviously the remote identification requirement, the possibility to define geographical zones and to have an identification requirement do have a positive effect on overall security, but we have seen in events like Gatwick that this may not be enough, and we also see that the technology, of course, is developing in a way which also makes the malicious use of drones more and more easy, so they can fly in swarms, the range is extended through 5G and so forth. So on that point, we organized last October, together with DG Home, a very well-attended high-level conference on countering the threats posed by drones. And one of the outcomes of that conference is the importance to educate those users who actually would like to follow the rules but who don't know them. And then obviously videos such as the one that Piotr showed are very important, but we also have an element here in our regulation with the requirement of every drone producer to put a leaflet into the drones in the open category, which summarizes the applications and limitations and obligations under EU law, so that at least the drone pilot is aware from the outset what he should and should not do. And finally, let me conclude with just an outset on the work of the use space, which was also mentioned on several occasions today. We see this as an additional element in increasing not only the safety, but also, for instance, the security aspects of drone services, because the use space will be an element which will make it much easier to identify cooperative drones, and hence you will also be in a position to identify non-cooperative drones which pose a security threat in an enhanced and faster way.
Thank you, Joachim. Yes, I agree. The European regulation will help a lot to make drone operations safer, and by doing so, it will also render a good service to increase the public acceptance of this operation. You mentioned the geographical zones, and I think it's interesting that the European regulation is explicitly leaving the possibility to the member states to designate geographical zones also for the purpose to protect privacy, environment, and security. So here that's already the, let's say, the golden bridge to address these societal concerns also by the introduction of geographical zones. So thank you for that. Dr. LAVELLÉE, you had an intensive look from an academic perspective to the European policy on UAS operations. What is your opinion on the issue which was just spoken about by Joachim?
Thanks. First of all, I would like to thank the EASA organizer to have invited me. I'm really happy, honored to be here. Normally, the last years I was sitting in the room, so I'm really glad and honored to speak to all of you today and to share some thought on the societal concern. I will try to bring maybe a different perspective to complement what I've been said so far. If we look at the EU regulation, I think that was a crucial and important step to clarify the rules for the drone user. And if we look at the regulation, it's addressed, of course, the operator, the manufacturer, the drone user, but that was, I think, the first step through which the EU then and the member states are speaking to mainly the drone user. Where I would like to go is, I think, to go a bit beyond and to see how now the EU, the member states, and all the stakeholders can speak to all the society, also the non-drone users, most of the people, in fact, who are not using drone yet, doesn't know even what drone is it, and how it's all about. And I think that now with the implementation period, that's provide a really good momentum and opportunity to then try to enlarge the discussion on societal concern. So already have been underlined the key security, societal concern, security, safety, the question of noise pollution, and that of course was important. But I think what is missing, and that again could be the opportunity with the implementation, is to explain with this EU regulation that now the EU has a new policy on drones, what that means, what is behind. And I think it's still not clear for most of the people that what is behind is, of course, the official integration, the upcoming integration of the drones in the airspace. And I think that's a key challenge to clarify, especially with the EU space, who will serve as a key opener, a door opener to then what everyone has said since yesterday and the different panels I attend. Everyone speak about the technological revolutions, about the new ecosystem to create a new era, which will change the life of the citizen. And when I think we use this narrative, I think it gets obvious that the societal impact will be really high. And that's why I think should be addressed the societal concern in a broader scope. So that's my general point. Just to go a bit deeper in the few minutes I still have, if we look at the EU regulation, of course, that was the first step to what? To create the single European market, so to create the market. And I think that was, as I said, the necessary first step. But I think now we should get a bit further and be careful with this business model approach, which I think tend to narrow the societal concern, namely to think that if people see the benefits, they will buy the drones, and to speak about only public acceptance. And I think it still may be early to already think public acceptance. Maybe we are still at the phase of public awareness, to raise the public awareness about what is coming. Most of the time, if we look pictures, or if we, many have mentioned survey that they have conducted, I think many people still believe that it will be this one drone in the park, or maybe flying over the garden. If we speak about thousands of drones coming over the cities, different purpose, I think we speak about something else. And here in this forum, we always see really nice video. I think this video should go much beyond to, again, raise the awareness of the people about what are we really talking about. Because I think the key question is what the integration of the drone in our future daily life really means in itself. And is all this broad discussion about introduction, of course, of new technology. So this has been already underlined from different perspectives. And about the red flags with the train example this morning, or yesterday also I hear a different example. And on that, I would like to, I find it funny, I think it was last week, Angela Merkel referred to what the German Emperor William II have said in 1905, that I believe in horses, automobiles are a passing phenomenon. And when I hear that, I thought, I will use it in my presentation. I don't know how much I believe in car, but as probably all of you, I think, I do believe that the drone, they are there to stay. But I think, in contrast to the car industry, we can see that with the interconnectiveness of the drones, with the development, the fast-paced development of artificial intelligence, of robotics, I think the drones will get developed much faster with many new applications, which also part of the broad spectrum if we look about societal impact. And I'm not sure that all citizens are aware, not just in Europe, but broadly speaking, about what is really coming and what we are really speaking about. And I think that should be part of the real debate about this integration of the drones through information campaign, to more education, sensibilization from different way. Yesterday, I hear really interesting presentation speaking about for instance, the Stockholm drone labs, and other cities confirm that they try to do the same to engage with citizens. I hear also the new buzzword, the co-creation with citizens, which I find also interesting. But I think all this concept should be clarified if we choose this concept, which really all the citizens, the vulnerable groups also, how much all people get involved in the broad story. And I think everything I hear here are really fascinating, are interesting, but I think beyond or behind all this is really the societal impact that we should not underestimate. Sorry. I hear also everyone speaking about the impact of the third dimension, so the use of the airspace. And I think there it's really something to think and discuss about what that means for the normal citizen in his daily life, to then be surrounding soon by drones. Also this 3D aspect or the vertical dimension, which will also change all the societal concerns we discussed. We all mentioned safety, security, but this concept can embrace so many different issues, especially with this third dimension included in the discussion. And I think that all the focus group, the survey I could read, which was open to public, and I think everyone also mentioned that, yes, there's an interest from the public side, but it's not clear yet what they really think. I think they're interested by this new technology, but what is really behind, so the integration of drones in their daily lives, that may be something else. But all the focus group I could read converge towards the same fear of the people with this full sky vision. And I think that should be considered how to tackle this aspect, but especially about the effect it will be on the citizen, about their conception of the space, of the public space, how much this will transform their daily life reality. And yesterday also I hear often that, of course, to use the sky is a way to manage the congestion of the ground, but I think we should be also aware and careful that it should not be transposed in the airspace, because this will be also a challenge to see a full sky perspective, and it's the main concern which come out, not just this visual pollution, but the sky which is also full. can be also bringing many issues, and talking about the perception from the people about issues like surveillance also, who might be add to the security safety aspect. And I will conclude.
I think if I understand this correctly, you advise us not only to see the commercial possibilities, but also to take the societal concerns on board, to have a closer look on the maybe not fully known yet impact on the daily life of everyday citizen. This is rather important. Well, you mentioned that there is still a lack of clear rules regarding the integration into the airspace. Well, this is something we hear a lot about tomorrow when we talk about U-Space, so I think this is on its way. And this is something where also our guest from the United States has a lot of expertise in, Joe Merkley. If I remember correctly from the information I have received, the integration of UAS into the airspace is one of your major activities. But besides that, we are very keen on hearing what does the FAA do to approach and to address societal concerns? And in particular, are there probably other societal concerns in the US than in Europe? That would be very interesting. Please go ahead.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss our viewpoint here today. In the United States, we view the integration of drones and the societal impact of drones much like we view the integration of aircraft and the societal benefits and impact of aircraft in general. We have not finished integrating aircraft into the NAS or society. And my colleagues who do work in noise with communities can tell you that quite clearly. There's still a lot of controversy. So what we're trying to do is from the very beginning put our framework together so that we can engage from the beginning in a long-term strategy. And we divide it up into the expectations around safety, the expectations around sustainability, under which we not only include emissions, but noise and visual pollution being noise pollution without a measurable sound. And then finally, security. The public's and the society's expectation around security, under which we also group privacy. Now, the FAA does not have the statutory authority in the United States to enforce or say anything about privacy. In the United States, the legal framework is such that privacy is regulated at the state or local level. And it makes it somewhat complex in trying to meet that expectation because we have no authority. And so we have to communicate with our state and local authorities very regularly and provide them with the tools and point people who have those concerns to those authorities. And I know it's an area of some tension within our society because they're very confused about how to get their concerns addressed. And one of the ways we try and explain to them is it doesn't matter what the vehicle is, whether it's a manned aircraft or a drone. If they're violating your privacy, it's the same act. If they're trespassing, it's the same act, right? So I want to start with how we're dealing with security because that really presents the risks I think we majorly have to mitigate. It also shows the breadth at which we're looking at integration into society. So in that category, we include our defense, our homeland security, our state, local, tribal, law enforcement, and other authorities. And what we see there is the greatest risk in this area are not our responsible drone operators, but they're what we call the clueless, the careless, and the criminal. I know it's a bit of a buzzword from us, and you've probably heard it, but it fits very well for us. And we see that it's a real challenge for us in the FAA because so frequently people express their frustrations with that part of the community that is not a responsible operator under Part 107, Part 135, Part 91, or any of our other parts, or even a recreational user, or a recreational user flying with a club. They're representing those rogue users. Our community that's responsibly operating frequently gets blamed. I was very disappointed. I recently read in opinion piece in a paper that tried to create a nexus between package delivery and a threat to passengers, which is absolutely, I think, irresponsible to do, because these are our best operators, our most responsible operators, and we really need to focus on this community that is almost unreachable to mitigate that risk. So for us, that's where our societal risk is in these irresponsible operators, our major societal risk. If I go back to the safety dimension, our society expects the same safety out of drones, i.e. they will not fall out of the sky, they will not fall into my garden, they will not fall into my pool, they will not damage my vehicle as I'm driving down the highway, that they would of an aircraft. And we plan to pursue airworthiness as our major mitigation against that. Even as our small drone operators for commercial purposes, we're making a huge transition to move them away from not requiring airworthiness to requiring airworthiness, so we can have that assurance of safety. And that goes also, I think, kind of hand in hand in explaining the benefits to society on the sustainability side. Most of our citizens, and we know this through our integration pilot program, where the presidential directive explicitly directs us to collect data on societal integration as a part of that. And our participants have all gone out into the community, and initially they're most concerned about privacy, and they're mostly, as others have said, ill-informed. They think the camera is there to spy on them. They don't understand that the camera is there as a navigation tool. And to your point about communication, as our participants communicate, they start to become more comfortable. We also know there appears to be a trigger point there that if the density of operations gets sufficient, we will hit enough people who aren't involved in the operation, who don't like it, that the complaints will start to rise. So where we're trying to draw all of those concerns is to telling them the mission that drones are doing for our society, and help them understand it's actually highly beneficial to our society to have these drones. So in several cases, infrastructure inspection, or your technical inspection as you referred to it, in oil areas in Texas, we are substituting drones for people driving in vehicles. They lose about one person a month to a traffic accident, a death to a traffic accident there. People climbing communication towers are no longer climbing communication towers. And they're also not losing their jobs because they're now becoming drone operators. So the way we're trying to reach out to the larger community is not just by letting them sit in their concerns alone, but also show them the positive at the same time.
Okay, so you follow let's say, a twofold approach. You talk to the communities, make them aware that drone operations are not so dangerous as maybe perceived. They are usually don't pose a risk to privacy, they don't pose a risk to security, and not to safety either. At the same time, you do a lot of communication with the drone operators to make it safer, to make the irresponsible drone operator become a responsible drone operator. So that's a very good approach to have to go both directions, so to say.
I just want to make one brief observation. Have you noticed North America separated ourselves with a little ocean here?
Interesting. No, I haven't. No, I haven't. Although it doesn't surprise me, because Canada and the United States are so close to each other right now on a political level, so it makes a perfect match.
Yeah, and the good doctor is to my north.
Yeah. Luc, first of all, congratulations to the nice video EASA has produced. You still have to tell me how you managed to get Scarlett Johansson to dub the drone, or wasn't it her? Wasn't it? Okay, I thought so. I recognized her voice. But EASA's competencies have not only increased in relation to unmanned aviation, with the new basic regulation that entered into force 1.5 years ago, but also in regard of cybersecurity and environmental aspects. So do you think these three domains they interact with each other? What we also saw the question on cybersecurity on the Slido earlier. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? I think you also provided a few slides.
Yes. Yes, thank you very much. Very happy to contribute to this reflection on the impact on the society or the society concerns. Before I'm going to the cyber and the environmental dimensions, let me come back for a minute on safety, because I think this is part of our DNA as EASA. Yes. I think we are systematically, of course, looking at that. We did when we prepare the proposal for the regulatory framework for the region. And the way we have seen safety has to be seen depending on the angle. What we have learned as a regulator is to take into account new angles of perception, how safety should be defined. And you have automatically, as we speak about society concern, to look at what the political view is on this program. When we wanted, we have been asked by the Commission to prepare a regulation. It was not a classical topic like commercial aviation or general aviation. So we had to start with this, and we had to learn when preparing that. And then the citizen was also on the screen, and we had to take into account how the citizens, as Piotr was also explaining, this is very important that we had to maybe design, draft, prepare, negotiating and consulting, having this on the table, and we have done that. So as mentioned by Patrick this morning, the shape of the regulation has changed when we were comparing to the, I would say, the conventional aviation. That's something we want to reiterate here. Safety is a concern, and we have to see it again from another perspective. If you want to, what we are saying very often, an holistic approach, we want also to see the safety benefits the drones are bringing to society. And that is a good way to start showing also to society that when we are introducing it, society will gain something. And it's also something new on our side. And when we had, with the César undertaking, making some demonstrators, it was part of really the requirements, that the project, when they were funded, has to show also the added value for society. But that's, maybe also to show how we want to continue to ensure that safety, when defined a rule, and when implemented by the national authorities, we maintain, if you want, some form of monitoring on how this is implemented and how we don't have, if you want, discrepancies between how authorities are implementing this regulation. And we have to help the states to ensure that the European approach we have designed at the beginning remains in place. And establishing interoperability between, for example, the repository, the registration is something we are working on. And another example, the organizing research to make crash tests, drone against aircraft, is something we are also doing in order to show that we are taking seriously this airworthiness element. So EASA does not stop his work when drafting the rule and submitting the rule to the Commission and the Member States. We have to continue to do it, and we are also reflecting in the European Plan for Aviation Safety now, which is also a newcomer, an instrument which is showing where the risks are. But going to the point of the other society elements, if this, I don't know, yes, oops, too quickly. Okay, let's do it, I don't know, yes, yeah, no.
Here we are.
Yes, okay, cyber security. Don't want to repeat what has been said many times today. What I want to say, it's part of the design. The way the rule has been designed, the way, the standards will be prepared, it has to be there. It is integrated, it's built in from the beginning. It's not something you will add afterwards. And where it can be seen as a burden for open type of category or very small drones. Then we have differentiated, and this is why we have different categories of drones. So it was not one size fits all. It has been also done in a way to show that we are defining the rule principles depending on the drone itself. But beyond this differentiation, what we have done also at EASA is to continue to look at how the risks are coming when they will be starting to be operated. When we will see drones flying in European sky, we will have to ensure that we continue to dialogue at European level. The design of the rule was done from European perspective, and we want to continue to establish conversation, dialogue, exchange of information, what the national authorities, what the operators will observe on site, what we will see as potential intentional attacks against the system, and that is something we should not do in isolation. So EASA will facilitate to get together and to analyze where the risks were coming from maybe one municipality in one of our states that everybody is learning, and we have to, it's really very important that we are creating a mechanism which alert the whole system, the whole network, and all the European architecture. So we have set up also tools for doing that, and the European Cybersecurity Coordination Platform, and that is important that we get this quickly alerted when something is going wrong. Another element EASA has done is to bridge with the other regulatory framework defining the cybersecurity requirements imposed on the national authorities from the telecommunication regulator, and what we call the NIS directive. It was important that we have no gap between what has to be reported in terms of incidents. It's also coming to the aviation, if sometimes it will remain at the national level. We would like to ensure that the whole European system get benefits from this tool. So going to environment now, said many times, it's also part now from the very beginning of the way we design the regulatory framework, and we cannot escape it, having in mind what Joachim was explaining. There is a new agenda in front of us, so we were right to put that black on white, if you want, at the very beginning in the requirements, operation requirements, and to have the CE marking only delivered when we are covering that. The way to do it, that remains something we are developing now, again through the demonstrator, again through the certification process we want to establish, and that's something which we want to be ready, of course, when the operators will start operation, how we are measuring and how the measurement will be applicable also across the member states. And also that, we have a way to measure the annoyance which can be comparable in order not to have disruption in the single market. And that's where EASA would like to help, of course, the authorities to prepare the appropriate standards in the appropriate way. So the last point on that chart is the life cycle. We speak about electrification, we speak a lot about battery. There is something we want to integrate also in our reflection, that we are not looking at one part of the drone operations, we have to see the full cycle, and we would like also to issue some advice in that respect to the EU, that they know how we have to define the environmental impact on the drones in the future, in particular in the context of the Green Deal.
Thank you, Luc. If I may ask the panelists, the esteemed audience, and also the organizers, if we can get an extra 10 minutes. Is that acceptable? Because I also would like to answer at least a few questions from Slido. But first, thank you so much. Yeah, because this is a 60 minutes panel only, not the 90 minutes panel. Thank you, Luc, very much. Well, every drone operator knows there is one aspect that we haven't talked about yet today, but which plays a very important role in an operator's life. That is a question of insurance. And Professor MASUTTI, you're an expert in air law and with a focus on insurance law as well. And you have prepared some slides on that, and we're very eager to hear what role the insurers can play in all of this.
exactly.
One too far?
It's okay, okay. Thank you for your question, and thank you also, as I'm delighted to be here today. Of course, the role of the insurers in the marketplace is to provide policies, standard policies, in order to reassure the potential victims of an accident, if an accident will occur, that they will be compensated. That is, in my opinion, the best way to reduce societal concerns. And what is happening currently? So, non-mandatory insurance scheme exists at international, at, let me say, also European level. Because we have, of course, the European member states. It was applied also for drones as a mandatory regulation, but let's see what it happened in Italy recently, where the Italian CAA amended the regulation in order to adapt the national regulation to the implementing regulation from the Commission, and they substitute the wording where was established that the insurance was mandatory under the European regulation done in 2004 with this wording where is established that a valid, effective and fit for purpose third-party liability insurance has to be established, has to be subscribed by the operator, which is, in my opinion, less effective, less strong than it was in the past. But anyway, the insurance market has already provided the market with standard policies, mainly for third-party liabilities. And they provided also tailor-made policies in order to cover the breach of laws regarding privacy and data protection, and also invasion, as I said, of privacy, but also noise complaints and so on. But they are mainly tailor-made. So we don't have an harmonized and clear framework regulation for this, and especially it's not clear if the operators have to subscribe an insurance policy. That is the main issues, because as we know very well, the basic principle of insurance is that the losses of the few are paid for by the premiums of the many. This is the main principle which characterizes insurers, and which allows the insurers to compensate the damage, especially when we have a very big damage, as could happen for catastrophic injury damage to person. We have seen that at European level, some jurisdictions could ask the insurers to pay at least 10-15 millions of euro for an injured person in a car accident, for example. So it considered a catastrophic event. And I think that a clear insurance mechanism would be established in order to guarantee the compensation for the victims. And that is, let me quote what the Lloyd's of London said recently in a report published on the drones, key issues for insurance, where they said that a robust regulatory framework is expected to be crucial to the provision of insurance for drone operations. Harmonized international standards and clarity on third-party liability will likely be important factors determining the effectiveness of any regulatory regime. That is what the insurance market said recently. But I've seen that also other insurers in other European countries are confirming what I have already quoted. And another issue, just the last issue that I want to recall here, is that for open and specific categories, teenagers of 16 years old are allowed to use drones. And I'm quite skeptical that they can subscribe policies, insurance policies, for example, because in several jurisdictions, the legal age starts at 18 years old, so not at 16. So we have to see what will happen with this issue.
Thank you very much. Well, from a regulator's perspective, we really value the role of the insurers because the European regulation, all regulation, has to be enforced. The competent authorities can't be everywhere, so it is important that insurers write in the terms and conditions that the coverage is only guaranteed as long as the operator flies or operates according to the regulation. And that's why the insurers play a very important role, and thank you for showing us the relation between regulator and insurance in this regard. So, thank you. So before having a closer look at the questions by Slido, I would like to ask the audience if you have any points you want to make. Otherwise, I would have a closer look at the questions. Okay, then the top question is, how can we really articulate the societal benefits from UAM drones? Who should be involved and who to lead such work? That's interesting. Jay, if I may, because you mentioned the outreach to communities, and I think there's a connection to this question. Could you elaborate a little bit further on the outreach?
Absolutely, thank you. I do believe it's the broad community that should be involved. I think we as the regulators, the ANSPs, are the face of the activity and can bring everyone together. But when we go out with the operators into the community and make sure that we're really meeting with a broad segment of the community, we found it to be most effective. Articulating the societal benefits of drones, I would say we're honestly struggling a little bit with that. Most value cases in aviation tend to revolve around passenger value of time or saved fuel or some other metric like that. And we've been having a difficult time articulating all of the value that drones are providing to society, particularly because they come from other areas that aren't necessarily the drone itself. So the drone helps you avoid driving someplace. The drone helps prevent someone from climbing a tower or going under a bridge. And these are very difficult use cases to quantify and explain easily. They're good examples, but they don't make very compelling regulatory justifications. Okay.
Yeah, I see that's not easy because you do not talk with the aviation community, but with new stakeholders. Luke and Joachim both want to join in?
Yeah, very quickly. I was referring to the demonstrators we are having, and I think we will gain from them what we can gain as benefits. So we hope the CESAR joint undertaking to report on that, but also the CESAR joint undertaking published I think 3 years ago, a very important market survey, and they've identified all the benefits, and that is available on internet, on their website.
Well, I would agree with Jay that obviously it is incumbent on the community as a whole, in particular those who want to then operate and provide drone services to articulate the societal benefits. On the other hand, let me put a word of caution here, because at the end of the day, there is a bit of a disconnect between the societal benefits and the use cases we actually see. I mean, everyone understands that it's great to transport livers or bloods from hospital, but when it comes to delivering parcels in inner cities, many people question the societal benefits. Similarly, for the urban air mobility that we heard, I mean, many people, my wife for instance, would consider that this is just a toy for the rich, as we heard earlier, and not necessarily something which will benefit society as a whole. That raises the question then whether as regulators we should actually engage in all this and try to put a value on these different use cases and also sort of steer our regulation in this direction, or whether we should just, as we currently do, try to open up a market and then leave it to market forces to determine what services are being provided. And there, of course, then there could be a disconnect between what the market provides and what society would actually find as being beneficial.
Okay, thank you. Question number 2, how can we really articulate, no, that's, that we already had this one. Oh, that question moved up, okay. The study, I wouldn't call it a study, a survey on social acceptance. Yes, I think it is available. It is published on the webpage of one of the German associations. The abbreviation is VUL, Victor Uniform Lima. Delta Echoes, and if you look it up on the internet, I guess this survey is there and it's accessible. Is it? It is. Thank you so much. Beautiful. And also, question number 2: will EASA be creating an air map with flight restrictions similar to that demonstrated by Poland? I think this one I can answer quickly, because that. It's Article 15 of the Regulation 947. This is the task of the member states, not of EASA. Although, of course, all the information will be available European-wide. And let me have a look. Maybe we take 2 more. Maybe somebody wants to choose a question, as we did it earlier. Feel free. Yeah, Luc, please, go ahead.
The single point registration, the same as you just said. It's up to the member state to establish their registration system. What we do is to ensure that we are offering interoperability, interconnectivity between the national registers to facilitate the exchange of information and data. That is the current situation today.
I think the last question, the last of the top questions, so to say, is also interesting. The new Green Deal, we mentioned the environmental aspects of unmanned aviation, although it might be Luc who has to answer it again, because you touched upon it at an earlier stage. Do you see a connection? Do you see that might be something that actually accelerates the developments in unmanned aviation? Oh, we're not there yet. Oh, anybody?
Well, I would very much think that this is one of the main positive selling points that this industry can bring forward. Because clearly, since we're starting to develop a new form of transport, and since we're imposing to a certain extent, but also see as a market-driven development, as we heard today from Lilium, from Volocopter, from Airbus, a form of mobility which will be electric, and which hence will be, at least in the operation, carbon neutral. I think this is really something which can be put forward as one of the important contributions that the aviation sector as a whole can bring in order to bring the Green Deal forward.
And be beneficial for societal acceptance, of course. Absolutely.
Of course, I mean, that is a societal benefit which all layers of society will easily accept and understand.
Well, thank you so much. So give me 2 minutes to wrap up. So I have identified 3 approaches to improve the societal acceptance. One, I think Piotr, you mentioned that very beautifully. Make the drone operator to become more aware, turn the irresponsible operator into a responsible one and a cooperative one, connected according to the upcoming requirements. The second approach would be to mention or to inform the public that the threat or the hazard which is perceived by drones is certainly not that big as it is. Not every drone which has a camera on board is actually taking pictures in that very moment. And the third one, and I think that's maybe the most interesting one, and also the one where we spend most time on, is to show the public the beneficial contribution of drones to public. There are so many beautiful examples, lifeguards, agriculture, technical inspections, of course also used by the authorities, where everybody can benefit, where actually the safety level is improved, because you don't have to do that by car, you don't have to do that by helicopter. And this is something we have to inform the public about. And maybe one interesting figure, I once heard that the question of death toll of the civil operations of drones, how high is it? Anybody has a guess? It's, don't quote me on the figure, but it's -3, because there hasn't been one casualty globally by a civil drone operation, but at least 3 persons have been saved. People who went adrift, people who were lost in the woods, people out there abandoned, they have been saved. So that I think is a clear figure which showcases the benefit of drones. Piotr, you caught the microphone. Do you want to add in?
Just wanted to add one thing, that I think there's one more element which I think was raised by Jay. There's one more element, I think, for the global audience, is the law enforcement. I think the general public has to have been aware and have this consciousness that the law enforcement mechanisms are in place. Because we are talking about the good things, so it's like a carrot and a stick. We've got a lot of carrots, but the stick has to be ready as well. So I think there's one more element.
Yeah, well, sometimes you need the stick, that's for sure. I also want to remember the words Joachim said, that it's, let's say, the words of warning, that we maybe should not differentiate too much between what kind of operation is actually going on right now. We should try to showcase the beneficial aspects of UAV in general, and not only limited to certain operations, if I got it right. Finally, I'm also very thankful that Professor MASUTTI has highlighted the role of the insurers, which also plays an important role. The law enforcement, the insurer, and the regulator, I think they're all doing their job to make drone operations safe and to increase public acceptance. So, this brings us to the end of panel 3. I thank you so much for your extended patience, and have a good evening. Thank you so much, and thanks to the panel.
Thank you also from me to the panel. That brings us to the end of day 1. As I said at the beginning, there's a reception waiting for us right now in Hall 10 in the showcase area. We start again tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning. Thank you very much.